us now is Amy Swearer, legal fellow at the Meese Center for Legal and Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Amy, welcome to Faith Nation. We just heard those devastating accounts of personal tragedy and loss. You know, every time this seems to happen, there's inevitably renewed talk of gun control. Amy, you testified at a hearing on the Hill yesterday over common sense steps to reduce gun violence. Do you believe there are places where Republicans and Democrats can come together?
Well, I think there are absolutely places where Democrats and Republicans can come together, including with some legislation that would actually play a significant role in helping to stop some of these mass public shootings. Unfortunately, Colorado had in place a red flag law at the time, and it seems that was not used in this situation, and it might well have been the case that it could have and should have been. But when we're talking about things like time-limited, targeted interventions to intervene when we start seeing the first signs that someone is becoming a danger to themselves or others, assuming that we can write those laws in such a way that there's significant due process, that those people aren't just having their rights summarily stripped from them, that seems to be a real basis for bipartisan support.
Along those lines, in your testimony, you said that even with warning signs, mass shooters are generally able to pass background checks to buy guns. Amy, would strengthening background check laws prevent that?
Well, not necessarily. So when we're talking about mass public shooters in particular, again, the problem is that they don't actually have either criminal or mental health histories that would have them flagged in a background check. Now, there are a very limited set of scenarios where a person can legally procure a firearm without going through a background check. I think one of the most commonly talked about ones are this idea of publicly advertised private sales within parties of the same state. We know it's not really how criminals largely get their guns. It's certainly not how most mass shooters get their guns, but it is worth at least addressing. I think the problem, as I talked about at the hearing yesterday, is the way that the law is written. It actually goes far beyond that and would criminalize a lot of other common sense, low risk transfers.
So I think you touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and ask again. Is there room for compromise on background check legislation?
Well, I think there can be, because, again, at the core, that this idea of arms list sales, for example, these publicly advertised private sales to strangers where you basically don't have any knowledge as to who they are as a person, whether they may or may not be prohibited. I think there's room to work for that limited scenario. But once you start getting beyond that into criminalizing any transfer, whether it's between friends or family members who know that they're not prohibited persons, temporarily surrendering your firearms without going through a background check because you're going through a rough mental health patch, those sorts of things absolutely should not be criminalized. And so if we stay away from that set of policies and just focus on the more limited publicly advertised sales, I think there is definitely room to work there.
Amy, we only have a few seconds left, so if you can, in a sentence or two. Republicans, we know, were open to discussing background checks and red flag laws back in 2019. Is this go around any different?
Well, so I know in 2013, when it focused just on publicly advertised private sales, there was significant support for that. But again, This is a very different law.
All right. Amy Swearer with the Heritage Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.